It's Wednesday. You all know what that means. It's time for another episode of the Life in the Movies podcast. I'm one of your co hosts. My name is Ryan Cam. Thank you all so much for tuning in. This week, well, The Marvels is officially out in theaters, and it is officially the lowest box office opening in MCU history. That's not good, but Jacob and I have both seen it, and we're going to be doing a deep dive into the film, talking spoilers and all, and we will be wrapping up our Defenders coverage, talking about the Defenders episode 8. But first, let's toss it over to my co-host Jacob Martin. Jacob, interesting week for you, hasn't it?
Yes, it has. Went to a Renaissance fair over the weekend for one thing. Uh,
How was that?
it was good. I wasn't used to something like that, but there were a lot of costumes. People were really taking it seriously. Went went to saw a jousting tournament. That was a lot of fun. Uh, Continuing to grow this friendship that's been developing for the past few months, and it's been a very exciting, encouraging weekend.
Have you seen any movies you want to talk about other than the Marvels, of
Yeah,
course?
well, I did see the Marvels. That was the only real movie I watched last week. I guess TV wise, I did catch up on Loki season two, finish that season, and people were raving about that show. The finale came out the same week as the Marvels. The Marvels has this crazy toxic reaction, but I'm sure we'll dive into that in a few minutes. Loki, on the other hand, has been universally positive. You have some people saying Marvel has died because of the Marvels, but yet we also have Loki season two, which a lot of people really, really love. So it's kind of this weird coin toss that people have with Marvel nowadays, which I find kind of interesting. But all that aside, I'm saying Loki season two, fantastic. Some of the Marvel Disney Plus shows, a lot of them have had great starts, but then they get a little iffy in the execution and they fumble at the end. Loki, with both of its seasons, I think it's the only show I feel like where it starts off great and it keeps riding and riding and riding and it comes to an incredible finish. Like Tom Hiddleston is terrific as Loki. And I feel like, especially where they in this season in particular with his character, it's like you have a really incredible character arc, which started with the original Thor movie back in 2011. And I'd seen people online that compare, they said Loki now has one of the best character arcs along with Iron Man. That's a big compliment right there. I don't know if I think it tops the Iron Man character arc, but it's still a really compelling character arc that definitely has a lot to live up to and where it plays into what Marvel is going to do in the future. I highly enjoyed the second season of Loki. There was a lot of good twists and turns. I would say visually, it's one of the coolest looking things Marvel's done in the last few years. I like the exploration of time travel and the TVA and how they deal, and how it plays into Loki as a character. I mean, you gotta love Owen Wilson on the show too. There was a lot of great stuff in season two, and to me, to be honest, kind of like a spoiler-ish warning. My thoughts on the Marvels was kind of all over the place, but with that aside, Loki was such a fantastic show that still tells me that Marvel can still produce some really good quality if they want to.
Well, I've heard nothing but good things about the Loki finale, so I'm thinking I might have to catch up myself. But uh but yeah, if that's all you got, couple things, like I said, Marvels we'll dive into in just a bit. But I watched Steven Spielberg's 1941,
Oh,
and that's 2.5 hours I'm never getting back.
I'm so sorry, Ryan.
Well,
I'm
the
so
thing
sorry.
the thing about the movie is that it's trying to be funny, but it feels like just a complete mess of a plot. And it's a shame because of all of the actors that they had in there. Dan Aykroyd, John Belushi. You got the Blues Brothers in this movie, and they somehow have nothing to do. You got John Candy. You got Christopher Lee as your villain. I'm sitting there like, this is a gold mine. But no, it's like the only halfway funny thing this movie had was a Jaws parody, which I'm sure was like the 1941 came out in like 78 or 9. So like it wasn't even that old enough to parody yet. So I don't know. The movie was just too it was just all over the place.
Yeah. Yeah. To those who think Kingdom of the Crystal Skull or Lost World Jurassic Park are like the worst Spielberg films, as much as I actually defend both those movies got nothing compared to 1941. That one is a hot misfire. Like the one, I'll give it this: the John Williams score is still good, and there's this really cool stunt work involving a Ferris wheel near the end. But other than that, it is a rough watch. It is painfully unfunny. Spielberg and comedy, no, they don't go well, especially if it's a full blown comedy.
And another thing is that this script was co-written by Spielberg, John Milius, and Bob Gale. Bob Gale would go on to be one of the writers of the Back to the Future movies. There is no excuse that this movie should have been as funny, as unfunny as it was, and yet somehow it was.
Yeah, I definitely don't know about that one. I think Robert Zemeckis, I think, had a hand in working on the movie too. So it's kind of fascinating that this was like an early dud for a lot of these people, but they would go on to do bigger and better things.
Yeah, Spielberg's literal next movie was a little movie called Raiders of the Lost Ark. We all know how good that movie was. So Spielberg went down, but he didn't stay down. And one more movie I did want to touch on briefly. I took my mom and my grandma to see the movie Journey to Bethlehem. This is a musical. It is based on the story of Jesus's birth. Didn't know what to expect with this one. Faith-based movies tend to be very like some hits, but a lot of misses. Honestly, the movie was not that bad. It was actually quite good. It's a musical. It's going to turn some people off. I just know it. But I thought the songs were good. I thought, and they even said at the end of the movie, while some liberties were taken, they did strive for accuracy. I think they were as accurate as they could to the story while making it a big, showy musical. So give director Adam Anders credit for trying to strive for the accuracy part of it. The some of the humor was kind of awkward. Like for example, the angel Gabriel, who's played by the Christian singer Lecrae. The only scene of him really in the movie, he appears in Mary's home and he's like, and he does like this pacing back and forth of like, all right, Mary, I bring you good news of great. No, I don't want to say that. Or I give you great news of no. And it's like this smash cut of him like pacing back and forth, like doing this thing. And it's so awkward. It's like in the Bible, angels, I know like the angels are not the clothed in white and are heavenly, like they have like 10 eyes and they're real freaky looking. So I understand the understanding of angels are not exactly like what has been predicted in other things. But I don't need to see an angel being like, all right, like running through his bullet points before he talks to Mary. I don't know. It was just a weird flex to me. It was so odd. But other than that, I thought the movie was better than it was expecting. Like, if the movie is directed by either the Irwin brothers or produced by Affirm Films, you can pretty much guarantee that it is at least going to be watchable in terms of faith-based movies, anyway.
It's good that you enjoyed that one. I actually didn't hear about this movie until a couple weeks ago, and I'm like, musicalized version of the Birth of Christ. Sounds interesting. I'm
Yeah,
glad you liked it.
and one of my favorite musicals is Godspell, which is a telling of the book of Matthew, I believe, on
Okay.
this on the setting of the streets of 1970s New York. So
Yeah, I like
I
it. And you can't go wrong with The Prince of Egypt, of course. That movie's amazing. Speaking of DreamWorks.
oh, of course. But yeah, what have you all been watching lately? Let us know in the comments. Love to read what you have to say. Well, Jacob, another one bites the dust. Let us wrap up the Defenders coverage with episode 8 called, well, the Defenders. As New York edges closer to disaster, Elektra sees what's beyond the wall, and the Defenders make a last-ditch effort to save the city. So, with these shows, the ending is kind of like it's a bit disappointing. It was a bit of a shaky landing for a couple of these shows. But I think they pretty much stuck the landing with this one, Jacob. I would go on record saying that this is one of the best of these Marvel Netflix shows that we've covered. What do you think?
I would. I think there's a lot of great enjoyment out of the Defenders. Like I enjoyed the show as a whole, but I think I'm gonna have to slightly disagree. I was semi disappointed with the finale.
All
Uh,
right, do tell.
primarily, like they talked about, they were trying to they were hyping up this big secret that the Hand was trying to share. Like they were building this up as like just this dark drab room with like bones of like creatures that they don't even scratch the surface on. I'm like, you build this up and you don't really do anything with it. It reminded me of that whole thing in The Mandalorian season 3 where, oh, they were building up to Moff Gideon clones. But then they do nothing with it because the clones get destroyed before we actually got to see what they were capable of. I'm like, yeah, I don't really care for stuff where they build up to something and it leads to nothing. I wasn't really a fan of the location of where the big final fight is because it was like on the bottom underground part of the building. It was kind of dull and drab looking, and the scenes were shot too dark. It was a little bit hard to tell what was going on sometimes in some of the action. Not the worst I've seen. It's still better than that terribly shot fight in the first episode, but I'm like, yeah, you could have done a better location to make the action a bit more epic. Now, there's still some good stuff in the finale. There's some good payoffs, especially the Daredevil and Elektra showdown. I thought was actually fun to watch. I enjoyed seeing, even though I don't like Bakudo, I've stated that openly. It's cool seeing him get decapitated. I'm like, yay, no more Bakudo. Pretty gruesome TVMA way. I'm like, there we go. I was waiting for that. But then other things I think they could have improved upon, like to be honest, the whole fact they were trying to make you believe that Daredevil died. I'm like, come on, I'm not buying that. They made like such a big dramatic fuss over that, and I'm like, he's coming back. We got a third season, so uh,
Yeah, we're definitely burdened with knowledge on that one, but I don't know. I think I was just had a soft spot. I thought the action was mostly good. I feel like everything was mostly satisfying, and believe me, there have been worse endings to these
yeah.
series that
I
we've
didn't say I
covered.
didn't say it was bad. Like I
No,
mean,
no, I understand that. I guess we're just agreeing to disagree. I
yeah,
liked it.
I would still say it was a mostly enjoyable episode. Like I would say it was still better than the finales of Jessica Jones, Luke Cage, and especially Iron Fist. Actually, not Luke Cage. The Luke Cage finale was pretty good,
Yeah.
but the Jessica Jones Daredevil season 2 finale and the Iron Fist finale was rough.
Yeah, I mean, the entirety of Iron Fist was rough, but that ending certainly did not help things. But like I said, I think the Defenders was a very easy watch for me, especially after Iron Fist. I mean, anything could have been and anything was desperately like needed after that. But next up, first of all, what did you all think of the Defenders finale and the Defenders in general? Let us know in the comments. And next up in the watch order is The Punisher season 1. So we're going to be taking a look at the world of the Punisher starting next week. And I am looking forward to that because I feel like what we've discussed quite a bit on this show, Jay, with Daredevil season 2, I feel like there was a lot of money left on the table with the Punisher character, especially from John Bernthal. So, I mean, he's getting his own series with this one. So here's to hoping that it's at the very least good.
Yeah, Daredevil season two was hit and miss, but one of the best things of season two was definitely John Bernthal as the Punisher, and I'm excited what they do with his spinoff show.
Yeah, well, let's dive into the main event of the evening and the Marvels. It was it was a thing that happened, and like I said, as of this recording, it is officially the lowest opening for MCU at the box office in their history. If it's it feels like a very glum time because Jacob, we're both MCU fans. I think I can accurately say that.
Yeah, for
Like
sure.
defenders, like we've pointed out a lot of stuff that we've disliked, like She-Hulk, among other things. There has been a noticeable dip in quality. I feel like there's been like, oh, they're just restructuring, they're gonna be fine. Things have been far from fine for quite a while, and I feel like I've communicated that at least a little bit while trying to be honest. I feel like there have been a lot of bad faith takes that have emerged recently because Disney has been struggling a lot. And it's like the popular thing to hate on Disney, hate on Marvel now. And so I try and be realistic, but I also try to be optimistic. I mean, I feel like I've done that, Jacob. Am I wrong?
Yeah, I think that, well, not that you're wrong, but the fact that you've been trying to keep an open mind on everything about this, and to me that's better than doing looking at the whole clickbait. Oh, Marvel is dead or Marvel's gone woke and all that stuff, and I'm
Oh,
like,
believe me,
you're just
those
doing that. You're just doing that to generate easy views. That's what you're doing.
yeah, believe me, those thumbnails have been like a rash all over YouTube. Like, have you
Especially with this recent movie that just come out. That's very easy to hate, and I feel like I gotta say this out of the way because the toxicity surrounding this movie is absolutely ridiculous. It's like people were upset that you got three women as like your main characters of the movie, and I don't get why people are bashing them so much. I know some had that beef on Brie Larson because they took her words out of context and try to make you think she hates men, which that wasn't what she was going with. But it's just that whole notion of like bashing a movie because of three women being the main characters of a movie is ridiculous. I'm sure a lot of these guys think Wonder Woman is fine, but then Captain Marvel is not okay. I don't get that.
yeah, it like I was one of the only ones who like I thought Captain Marvel in 2019, I thought it was fine. I felt like it was just fine. I didn't love it, I didn't hate it. I thought it was just fine, and I stand by that.
Yeah.
However, and I want to give the ball to you first in terms of Marvel's thoughts. I feel like the movie's not the worst. I still maintain if we're looking at like MCU movies, not series, because if we were counting series too, then She-Hulk would be absolute bottom of the barrel. I'd say my least favorite MCU movie is still Iron Man 2. They could have talked about leaving a lot of money on the table. Like everyone's just talking over each other in that movie. And what we could have gotten with one of the more intriguing villains in Ivan Vanko, we instead end up getting Justin Hammer. That is not a fair trade. But Iron Man 2 thoughts for another time. The Marvels is not the worst, but it is not particularly great either. It's not even mid tier, it's like below the mid tier. But there are parts of it that I did genuinely like. So this movie feels like a genuine paradox to me. But Jacob, please take the floor.
All right. So, like I said, I can see like I've seen like the differing opinions online. Those who hate the movie, and then there's some that really enjoyed the movie and said they had a blast with it. I honestly respect both opinions on the movie. I'm pretty much right in the middle. on the Marvels. And what's funny is I feel the same way about the Marvels as I do the first movie, but I have like different issues with both movies. Like both movies are fine movies. Like there's nothing like horribly offensive about any of these Captain Marvel movies. They have, the professionalism. Brie Larson is good in the title role. Some of the action's not bad, but there's nothing really about either movie that stands out compared to the top tier Marvel movies. Now, there's some legit really good stuff in this movie. Like honestly, even though I like Captain Marvel, the character just fine, and I enjoy Brie Larson's spunk in this character. The scene stealer was Iman Vellani as Miss Marvel. Like she was excellent. I kind of wish she had a solo movie, honestly, on the big screen. You could tell out of all three of the Marvels, she was the one who was the most invested in her character, and she was the one who really enjoyed being on screen. I just love seeing the passion of the actor reflected in the character, and it was just such a very energetic performance. But the camaraderie in all three were really good. I will give the movie that. Had a good pace to it, an hour 45 minutes. I felt like it didn't overstay its welcome. I thought the film, I think, knew what it wanted to do. I think it did a good job of entertaining its audience, but at the same time, it didn't really do anything distinct to stand out from the best Marvel movies. This movie has a very sucky villain. I did not care for the villain in this movie. To me, it was like a discount version of Ronan, the accuser from Guardians of the Galaxy. Not that Ronan was the most memorable villain either, but at least Ronan had the physique and the voice to where he can serve the purpose of the story while not being like a memorable villain. This character, I could not buy this woman as this villain. I didn't think the acting was that good. I didn't think I could not buy her being this power hungry villain wanting to destroy innocent people. And that took me out of the movie. And that hurt some of the stakes of the story. I think it hurt some of the emotional urgency of the film that it wasn't really going for, that it was going for. And it kind of like, it was kind of a disconnect, I think, by the third act. And I will have to be honest, I did reveal this on Letterboxd. Where I'm currently at, the movie theater, I'm really spoiled right now because there's recliner seats in the AMC theater I go to in the Tennessee area. So I got a little sleepy by the third act, and I actually dozed off after one of the action scenes. Are we doing spoiler warning at any time?
Yeah, I was just about to say we're gonna do this is
Okay.
gonna be a spoiler filled review. So
All right, so I can go into this. So
yes.
I dozed off, right, and I fell asleep. And I woke up after the conflict was over, and it got the part where Miss Marvel is back, and Nick Fury's like, "What happened?" And she's like, "Monica didn't make it." And I was like, "What? Monica didn't make it? I missed that. Dang it!" So I'm gonna have to go back when it goes. I think when it goes on streaming, I'm gonna have to rewatch the Marvels to see if some of the negatives that I have of the movie are the same on rewatch. Because I dozed off, I missed possibly maybe an emotional scene because it sounded like Monica did like a self-sacrificial moment there, and I'm like, okay, if I had actually seen that, it might have worked. I don't know, but right now I'm like, I didn't really get much emotion out of the story, and that's what took me out of it. But like I said, the movie's okay. Like, I don't think it warranted the toxic reactions online. I wish people could, respect others' opinions and stuff on movies like this because this one is like such a breezy popcorn movie. I don't think it's a great movie. It didn't do anything awful, but despite some really good stuff in it, I don't think it really stands out among the best in the genre either. So I'm like right in the middle on Captain Marvel or the Marvels.
Yeah. Well, I wanted to get out in front and say that Iman Vellani, I have not seen the Miss Marvel TV show. she was a delight in the Marvels. Her and her family, they stole every scene that they
Yeah.
were in, together or separate. Got the biggest laugh of the movie was her dad when he was talking to the dude on the space on the Saber station the about opening a 401k, and when the guy's like, I'm 306, and the son is like, oh dad, he's the same age as you. I don't know why that made me laugh so much, but it did. But whenever the family was like doing anything, or whether it was Kamala by herself, she was great. And I hope that Iman Vellani gets much better work after this, because she is genuinely very talented, and she made the movie watchable for me.
Yeah, for sure. Even in the Miss Marvel show, like the aspect of her and her family was a major highlight in the entire series. And it was great to see that reflected again in the Marvels.
Yeah, and the thing about there were just like you were talking about with Dar-Ben, that's the name of the villain. I feel like in some of the marketing, and John Campea brought this up, and he did a better job explaining it than probably I'm going to, but it seemed to me that the marketing was to imply that she was related to Thanos or was related to Ronan the Accuser. And she certainly has the dude's hammer, which, side road, how was she able to how was she able to remake that hammer? Because at the end of Guardians of the Galaxy, that hammer got destroyed. So how did she remake that? Is she related to Ronan the Accuser? I hear that like she's his daughter from what I heard, but like when did Ronan time to have children in his like holy war against the Kree? I just have more questions than answers with this villain, and I agree with you. She is definitely weak, very weak tea when it comes to her. And I want to shout out the actress Zawe Ashton. She, I think, did about as good a job with the material as you could expect. It's not her fault. She was just really given not that much to work with. And she comes across, like you said, kind of like a bargain bin version of Ronan the Accuser. And Ronan the Accuser wasn't that impressive of a villain to begin with. So you're a derivative of a derivative almost. I feel kind
Yeah,
of bad for Zawe Ashton because I feel like what she is given, she makes the best of, but still, it's not good.
yeah. And then I think what also doesn't help, the story sets up this interesting backstory history with her and Captain Marvel, where Captain Marvel did something in the past that she thought was going to help the people, but it instead made things worse. And because of that, she's been nicknamed the Annihilator. And I feel like you could have done a lot more with this backstory instead of just relegating it to this expository flashback where they just kind of tease at what happened. And I'm like, if you fleshed out this more, that would have brought more emotion to the story. I think it would have made me maybe see more where the villain is coming from, and maybe see some of the regrets and some of Carol Danvers. Some because this movie shows that even though she does a lot of cool things, she does make reckless decisions sometimes. And I think if they had explored that a little bit further, that would have brought more emotion to the story that I was looking for. And they just kind of gloss that over to where it's just like a throwaway bit. And I'm like, you could have done more with this, right?
Yeah, another kind of throwaway thing was the whole thing. It felt very contrived between Captain Marvel and Monica Rambeau with the whole thing like that their aunt and cousin, and they do this whole thing where like Monica was blipped during the whole Thanos thing, and she when she returned, like there was like no one there to greet her, and she like holds that against Captain Marvel. And I was sitting there like, it wasn't exactly like Captain Marvel was just ignoring you on purpose. She was helping fight against Thanos and that whole 5 year thing that she was doing with the rest of the remaining Avengers. So, like, Monica Rambeau was having a moan over it, and I just felt like it was completely unearned, or it was something that I felt like the movie could have explored, but just didn't. I feel like there was an entire movie that felt like in between Captain Marvel and the Marvels that is just going to go the way of Batgirl or Coyote versus Acme. It's in the Phantom Zone somewhere, and we're just never going to see it. Because I had so many questions leaving this movie. It felt very like a cartoonish level of just having it there for the sake of having drama there.
I mean, I can kind of see where Monica's coming from because it sounded like, you know, she made that promise to her when she was a little kid. And, she said, I'll be back in a flash or whatever she said. And, she went and did all these other things up in space. And, even Captain Marvel had this mentality of, oh, I did all these things. If I go back now, I feel like I failed her pretty much. And so that kind of, they kind of drifted apart after that. I think I see where you're coming from on the pettiness there because you're two grown women. I mean, you could have solved this out way earlier than what the movie did it, but I digress.
Yeah, and they have this conversation on Captain Marvel's ship where it's like a little girl who was hanging on every word, and I was just sitting there thinking to myself, this is the same conversation that like Matthew McConaughey had with his daughter in Interstellar without any of the nuance or any of the quality. Like it felt literally like that same conversation, but instead of just feeling crushing because this dude has to do this because like the world is going to die if he doesn't, but at the same time he's essentially leaving his family for the rest of their natural lives. It's soul crushing, and then that whole conversation in this movie is just reduced to you left me, how dare you. It felt very cheap.
Yeah, I got you.
But
Uh,
But one thing that I did like, and this is a bit of a step up, was Nick Fury. I felt like it was more of a return to form for him. He had a couple funny lines here. I love the line where he and the rest of the cats, which we'll talk about the cats in a minute, but the cats, and Kamala Khan's family are falling to Earth, and the sun is like praying and whatever, and he's like, "Are you praying?" He's like, "Don't stop." And then like the dude's praying, and then he's like, amen. Like again, I don't know why I laughed at that so hard, but when he just
yeah,
said the random amen, it cracked me up. It felt like a bit of a return to form after the what they tried to do with Secret Invasion, and it didn't really work.
yeah. Nick Fury was definitely. I don't think he was as memorable in this movie as he was in other projects, but it's always cool to see him in a Marvel thing because Samuel Jackson and Nick Fury is a fun character. But one thing I do have to give the movie credit for is this. I'll give the movie credit for it trying to embrace the weird and wacky. Some of their other recent stuff tried to do something similar, and it didn't fully work. Thor: Love and Thunder, the more I think about it, the more I like it less and less because you have Jane Foster dying of cancer mixed with screaming goat jokes.
And a love triangle between Thor, an axe, and a hammer. Taika
And then,
Waititi directed that, folks.
yeah, and you got She-Hulk, which was all I think supposed to be one giant troll parody show almost, and it failed spectacularly.
Need we say more?
But this one, I mean, this one I felt like it embraced the tone a lot to where I'm like, okay, it goes in some weird directions, but they stand out in kind of a memorable way. Like you have the planet where all the characters break out in the song. The first time they started singing, I'm like, what the heck are we going with this? This is weird. And then the more it plays out, I'm like, okay, there's kind of a charm to it that's kind of fun. I wish we got to see more MCU esque musical numbers. I wish I could have done more with that. But hey, that was kind of cool. And then you get this really weird scene where all of the alien cats called the Flurkins, they go on the ship and they don't have they run out of escape pods, and so they decide because it's revealed that the Flurkins can swallow things and then puke them back out. they decide to eat all of the human beings to get them to safety, while the song Memory from the Cats movie is played in the back. And I was just sitting there like, who
I was
created
go
this?
I was sitting there thinking to myself, why? Is like what is going on
I
here?
was struggling to. I was like, I don't know. Just the concept alone was it was such a dark joke. Like I could see James Gunn doing that. I'm surprised James Gunn didn't come up with that in the Guardians movies. But the fact that they played the big song from Cats, which spawned into a terrible movie from 2019, which is memorable in its own bad way, just made the scene more. I think it just added to the dark joke of that. I was like, what? I don't know if that was intentional or not, but just that song, I'm like, oh my gosh, they're really doing this.
You don't do something like that on accident. You clearly do that on purpose. And like I said, I do see where you're coming from there, and I do appreciate that. Again, going back to the whole, it feels like there was another movie made and I just didn't see it, with the whole thing of when did Captain Marvel get married? And she said it was a legal thing, but still, it feels like there was an entire movie squeezed in between and no one's going to get to see it. And this is not a thing because I haven't seen any of the Disney Plus shows except for WandaVision. My thing is that I don't need to have my handheld walked through a movie. All that I need is just some sort of explanation as to where this came from and just why. And the whole arranged marriage thing just feels like it comes up and then we never hear from it again. This is like just an attitude of why bother?
Yeah, actually, they didn't do much Captain Marvel in the Disney Plus shows, so this was new to me too. And this is someone who's seen all the Disney Plus shows, so I definitely get what you're saying. I don't think it bothered me as much because this there's a time gap between the two movies, so obviously stuff's going to be revealed in the time span since the time period of the first movie, which was set in the 90s. But I definitely get what you're saying. I do think, even though I appreciated the shorter runtime, the film definitely did feel a bit chaotic at times, where I feel like maybe you could have slowed it down a little bit so you could add more emotion to the story. But
Yeah, it just, like I said, it feels like it was just put upon for the sake of it feels like the movie at times feels like too long and not long enough. Like I am so glad they didn't do a Quantum Mania and just do it like 2.5 hours long because I've said it in other areas and I'll say it again here. I am sick to death of 2.5 hour long comic book movies. Please, for the love of everything, no more of those unless it is entirely necessary. But please, like, use your time wisely. I feel like there was just, like I said, like an entire movie just edited out of existence and the movie has no interest of filling us in, like where do these people come from, what is their relationship to who, it feels it feels disjointed, I guess.
yeah, uh, I definitely do agree with that to some degree. But I will say I was excited about the end of the movie, even though I slept during a certain part of the third act. I did like the fact I liked the callback at the end where they kind of play around with the whole post credit scene of the first Iron Man, but it's Kamala Khan and she's trying to recruit Kate Bishop from the Hawkeye series into joining the Young Avengers. I'm not fully sure what the Young Avengers is. I'm not a comics guy, but I know that's a big deal for some, and they're teasing something that I think could be really cool in the future, especially with some of the characters that we already that based on that final scene are going to be a part of that, particularly Kamala Khan and Kate Bishop, which are two characters I really like.
I'm glad you liked it. I didn't particularly care for it. I felt it was too like, hey, you remember that Iron Man scene? Like it felt too member berries for me.
Ah,
But it seemed but Haley Steinfeld was there. I'm a fan of hers, so nice to see her get some time.
I mean,
But the last
and
credit
you
scene,
had, and you said you hadn't seen the Hawkeye show, right?
I know what happens.
She,
So like
she stole the show in that series. I think I was getting into her character more so than Hawkeye.
yeah, and so like I said, I'm glad Haley Steinfeld because I am a genuine fan of hers. I'm glad that she is going to be a part of this. But let's get into the other post-credit scene, which won't be a play-by-play, but basically, Monica Rambeau wakes up in an alternate universe, the universe where the X-Men exist. And not only do the X-Men exist, her main physician is Beast, not just Beast, Kelsey Grammer's Beast, which considering that dude's politics, I'm kind of surprised Disney allowed him within 25 feet of any of their set, but that's a whole nother story for a whole nother time. But then they basically wake up or Monica Rambeau wakes up in the X Mansion with her mother playing a character named Binary. Is like, all right, I'm going to ask you this once. Who are you? I was like, aren't you two? And it's like, oh, right, different timeline. And so it's like, okay, this is how they're going to introduce the X-Men. So alternate universe, different slightly, but basically like two parallel roads, I suppose. It's going to be interesting to see what they do with this because as of now, the only MCU movie planned for next year is Deadpool 3, which we all know what that's going to be about. So so I don't know how to feel about the X-Men showing up. I mean, I am excited for that prospect, but as of right now, I feel like it was a good scene. What do you think?
Yeah, I thought the post credit scene was great. I said when I read on Letterboxd, I said it was dope. I still stand by that. Uh, say what you will about X Men: The Last Stand, but Kelsey Grammer as Beast was actually awesome casting. So it was great that they brought him back in this one scene. I think it's cool that they're planting the seeds for some really cool crossover stuff, which I hope Deadpool 3 really brings full potential of that because I already know, besides Ryan Reynolds obviously coming back as Deadpool, Hugh Jackman's going to be the co-lead as the Wolverine. And I wonder if I'm wondering how many appearances that are going to be in the movie. I don't really sure. I'm not really sure. I'm not going to speculate on that because I feel like people speculate on things too much and they get disappointed when they're not met, which I felt like that was why some people were disappointed by Multiverse of Madness because they thought that was going to be a cameo filled movie and it really wasn't. It was just that one scene. But I still thought the movie was awesome regardless.
Yeah.
But anyway, I, I enjoy these post credit scenes because it leaves me hopeful about the future of Marvel. And I know Marvel's in a rough patch. This movie did not have the best opening weekend. It didn't have the best reviews, but I still think, even though they've hit, I still feel like Endgame was their peak. But I'm still curious about what they're doing next. And aside from a couple of blunders, I still mostly enjoy a lot of their stuff. So I think I think if they get the kinks out of their system and better balance their stories, I think, and rely more about the overall quality of the film instead of rushing to meet a deadline, I think Marvel will be in a better place.
See, I feel like for the past couple of years we've been going through a bit of a painful rebuild. So it's like after Endgame, it's like, okay, definite leveling off. So now what do we do? And with the whole Jonathan Majors Kang situation, it now is a serious question of what the hell do we do now?
Yeah, yeah, because I mean, and this is after watching Loki, because Jonathan Majors was in that show as well. I mean, I gotta be honest, I thought Kang was excellent in both Ant Man and then Loki. I'm like, I wanted to see where they were gonna go with this, and I'm not gonna like judge Jonathan Majors or anything because I don't know much about the situation as everybody else does, but it doesn't look good. Some of the stuff that's against him. I mean, you can't. But you gotta know more information before you decide. Okay, are we going to keep this actor or not? But I've heard reports that they instead want to shift on another character. And I think honestly, that's a big mistake. You've already teased Kang as your big bad. And I think they've done a good job with that so far in planting the seeds. If Jonathan Majors is guilty, don't just change characters. I mean, Marvel's recasted actors in the past for various reasons. If you got to recast, then go on and recast. It'd be hard to top what Jonathan Majors did, but I'm sure you can find another talented actor that could fill in, and it'd be a seamless transition, kind of like Rose from Terrence Howard to Don Cheadle. Like that worked. The Hulk, Mark Ruffalo, no, Edward Norton to Mark Ruffalo, that worked. So it's not like they haven't recasted before for various reasons. So that's just my 2 cents on the whole thing.
I'm just saying, Denzel Washington is right there. Also,
Mm-hmm.
another choice, Kelvin Harrison Jr. So, I mean, wait and see. But if you've put all your eggs into the Kang basket and you need to recast him, then just do it. Like we've established that Kang the Conqueror has many forms, so it shouldn't be that complicated of the thing to do. So, but we're sitting here November of 2023. Deadpool 3 does not come out until July of next year. So a lot can happen in that time. So all that we can do is just armchair quarterback this thing. But ultimately, I'm still on board. I'm still a fan. Definitely some waned interest. I've seen some people being like, I'm tapped out. I'm sorry. And I can understand. But I want to see what happens next. And if that next step is another misstep, then, well, I guess I'm going to have to join the line as well. But
Well, at least your attitude is better than the. I don't know if you've seen on Twitter. I don't watch Soups' channel, but he's like all clickbait now. It's like I'm done with Marvel. Next video, Echo trailer reaction. Yeah, Marvel's back. Oh, let's get serious about Marvel. Okay, Marvel's okay again. I'm like, okay, what are you doing, man? You're just doing clickbait now.
I don't know if you ever heard of the controversy surrounding Soups, but apparently, like he got in way over his head, and or not way in over his head, but like his head got so big that he essentially just like became kind of an egomaniac. Like I've never really followed that guy. I thought that dude was kind of a content kind of like an engagement farmer. I've never really, I don't want to say I've never liked him. I've never met him, but I just feel like he's one of those dudes just looking for the access. Like
Yeah, I just
I feel like he was a fan at one time, but then just posts like 5 or 6 tweets like a day saying like, "What did you think of X, Y, and Z?" It feels very fake to me.
yeah, I just still can't get over that viral video where he was recording himself in a Superman outfit, trying to be surprised by the one-off Superman cameo for Black Adam that's never going to get built up to anything in the Black Adam movie. Make it believe, trying to make people believe he was shocked by it when he's wearing a Superman outfit and that cameo was leaked. So what are you doing? Why would you record in a theater too? That's just wrong.
Yeah, there are just, I guess the moral of this particular part of the story is that there are a lot of fakes, there are a lot of grifters, and there are just a lot of people who say they're fans when in reality they're the farthest thing from it. It is unfortunate, but they get the views. So that it just is what it is. All I have is my little channel, and all that I can do is I can just be honest. If I as long as I am honest on here, then my head will hit the pillow at night knowing that I was honest and that I was forthright about my opinions. But Wow, that was a lot to unpack with just a Marvels review, Jacob. But I'm glad that we had this dialogue and this conversation. I pass it off to all of you. What did you all think of the Marvels? Comment below, let us know. Love to read what you have to say. As Jacob always says, let's make it a civil and healthy discussion. Please and thank you. But Jacob, it's a privilege to do this with you every Wednesday.
Drop reviews this week from the previous What Watch live stream. These are carryovers from that. I'll be posting my review, Sobering Disney review of Honey, I Shrunk the Kids, along with my review on my channel for Iron Fist Season 1. So be on the lookout for that coming to the channel this week.
Oh, I definitely will be just to see how angry you get. But yeah, Jacob's channel is linked in the description. Go give him a subscribe there. As for this channel, Scorsese month will be rolling on. Matt Wyatt, one third of the Small Talk podcast, will be joining me to review The Departed. So that's going to be a lot of fun. And I will be reviewing a couple of Thanksgiving new releases, especially Napoleon. I'm definitely going out of my way to see Napoleon. But thank you all so much for watching. For Jacob Martin, my name is Ryan Cam. We will see you in the next one. Y'all take care.